Hello everyone, welcome to this ESAT section on statistics. Now the statistics and probability section of ESAT contains a few questions in the main exam. It won't be that many, but there are a few. The majority of the section 1 test will be algebra, geometry, ratio, proportion. So the first thing that we will do is time series. So what is a time series? It records a variable at regular time intervals. This is important. The time intervals have to be regular. Okay. A trend line, which is the line of best fit, is drawn through the time series data and shows the overall direction of change. Alright, so the trend series line can show the change to be upward, downward, or roughly constant. Alright, so here is an example where we look into monthly sales data. Now there is no fixed interval in which a time series has to be built, but there has to be a regular interval. For example, you can do daily sales data, you can do yearly sales data as well. Hopefully that graph will be going upwards for a successful business. Remember, in a time series graph, time is always on the x-axis. Like, this is non-negotiable. That's why it is named time series. If time is not there, then why name it that way, right? So time series graphs imply time is on the x-axis and variables should be on the y-axis. All right. Consecutive points are joined by line segments. You do not freehand diagram the curve. A trend line is drawn through the supposed middle of the data. Now this part can be calculated in various ways. You can use root mean squared, you can use rolling averages, and so on. It all depends on the data that you are analyzing. So trend line will show you the general direction of the data, and any fluctuation that can occur will show as variations above or below the trend line. It will only be considered a fluctuation or a variation if it drifts above or below the line. Moving on to the next part, histograms. Now remember that bar charts can be drawn on any data. So even if you have class-wise data or discrete data, you could draw a bar chart. A bar chart could be drawn horizontally, it could be drawn vertically. It could also be drawn for categorical data. Okay, but unlike bar charts, histograms are only used for continuous group data. We will define the statistic of frequency density, which is given as frequency by class size. So from here, if we cross multiply, I'll get frequency is equal to frequency density times class size, which is the area of the bar. Because if you are plotting the histogram and you put frequency density on the y-axis, then if you multiply the class width or the class size and the frequency density, which is the height, then height into width gives you the area of this rectangle, and the total area of the histogram should give you the total frequency. Now in histogram, all of the bars are of equal width and there is no spacing between them. Here you can say that the rectangle from 30 to 50 is not equal width to the others, but that is actually not the case. Since it has the same value from 30 to 40 and 40 to 50, you can treat this as two equal rectangles. Same with 50 to 80, you can treat it as equal rectangles from 50 to 60, 60 to 70, and 70 to 80. The next concept we will learn is cumulative frequency. So cumulative frequency is a running total of the frequencies up to the end of each class. So let's say 0 to 10 has 5, 10 to 20 has 10, then the cumulative frequency here will be 5 and here will be 15 because I add 5 and 10. Now we look into quartiles. Okay, what are quartiles? So quartiles are obtained from medians, right? The easiest way to obtain quartile is to first find out the median of the data, and then median will split your data into two equal halves. Take the first half of the data, calculate its median, take the second half of the data, calculate its median. Now you have 4 intermediate points, one at half, which is the median, one at 1/4, which is the Q1, and one at 3/4, which is the Q3. So quartile 2 is also the median value. For quartile 3, you use it up to 3n/4, and for quartile 1, you use it up to n/4. Now quartile 3 minus quartile 1 is known as the interquartile range or IQR. Okay, this represents the spread of the data. So if the IQR is narrow, that means the data is centered around the median, and if it is wide, that means it is spread out evenly. You generally won't get complicated problems from this. Now we move on to the measures of central tendency, mean, median, and mode. So what is mean? Mean is the arithmetic center of the data set. What do I mean by that? I mean that if I replace every member of the data set by the mean, the data set would behave the same. That is known as the arithmetic center. So it homogenizes the entire data set. Median is the positional data set, and it only works on ordered data, which means you have to sort the data before calculating the median. For an odd number of elements, the median is the n plus 1/2th value. So at the n plus 1/2th value, if you stand there, the number of elements in front of you should be equal to the number of elements behind you. This won't work in an even size distribution, right? So if there are 4 data, 1, 2, 3, 4, there is no specific point which will give you same number of data in front and behind unless you take 2 at a time. So 2 of the numbers cannot be a median. So we take the average of those 2 numbers. Okay. So for even number of data points, the median is given as half into n/2th term plus n/2 plus 1th value. Okay. This weird thing. Now when n is odd, n plus 1 is even. So you can easily find out n plus 1/2. But when n is even, you cannot do n plus 1/2, right? Otherwise you will get a decimal. That is why you do n/2 plus 1, and then you calculate the total average of these. Mode is the measure of popularity of an element in the data set. It may not be unique to the data set. That means there can be multiple modes. Okay. Now median and mean work for numbers only, but mode can work for qualitative measurements or categorical data. I'll give you an example. So let's say you are surveying people coming out of a movie theater. You ask them a simple question: how was the movie? And you give them 5 options: very bad, bad, mediocre, good, very good. Now for these 5 questions, you get responses from every person exiting the theater, and you can find out the modal response. right? So in this particular experiment, we had no numbers. We just have 5 qualitative questions. And based on that, we can calculate the mode. But we cannot calculate the mean and the median unless we assign a score to it. For example, bad could be 0 and very good could be 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. When I ascribe these values, then I can calculate the mean and the median. But mode can be calculated before that as well. So that's why mode has its uses. And there could be more than one mode in a data. So if the dataset contains 2 modes, it is known as a bimodal distribution. The easiest way of calculating the mean, and the only one in syllabus, is known as the direct method. You don't have step deviations and stuff. But that doesn't mean that you cannot use it. So if you have been taught the step deviation method in school and you feel like it will make your calculations faster, do use it. Because ultimately this is an MCQ based test. So whatever methods you apply when solving a question does not matter as long as you get the question correct. So the direct method is x bar, the mean, is equal to sigma fx divided by sigma f, where x is the class mark. So class mark is basically the midpoint of the class. So if a class is from 10 to 20, then the class mark is 15. Upper bound plus lower bound by 2. So sigma f into the class mark divided by sigma f. Based on this method, try this question. I have spoiled the answers. So try this question and note down the solution. Take 90 seconds, then we will match it. The solution was quite simple. So for every class, you get the midpoint and then multiply the frequency with it, get the values, add them up, divided by the total observations. The total observations will be obtained by adding all of these. So it is 1730 divided by 50, which turns out to be 34.6. That is the answer. Alright, now we look into something known as the combined mean or the weighted average. So if there are two groups of size n1 and n2, and these have means x1 and x2, then the combined mean would be x1 n1 plus x2 n2 divided by n1 plus n2. This is also known as weighted average. This is very important because in multiple calculations, you need to provide weights to different attributes in order of their importance. For example, there is a concept in finance known as VWAP, volume weighted average price. In this method, you put more importance on the prices in those days where the volume traded was the maximum. So that means many people were participating in the market and the price discovery would be better. Okay, so there the weights are volumes. Going back to another easy example for non-finance people, let's say we look into the scores in mathematics for 2 sections of the same class. Section A has 40 students and their average score is 85. Section B has 60 students and their average score is 80. So what is the overall average score of the entire class? For these type of problems also, you can use the combined mean. So the n1s would be the class sizes of the respective sections, and the x1, x2 would be the means of the respective sections, and from there you can combine to get the weighted average. Alright, the next section is what happens when we add or remove values from a given mean. Now you could do this algebraically, write out the formula, get the sum, take the unknown variable to be x, but there are direct formula as well. So this will make your life easier. So if a mean of n values is known and one value is added or removed, use the sum of values to figure out what happens. So if a value k is added, then the new mean is x bar times n plus k divided by n plus 1, because one more value is added, so now you divide by n plus 1. If a value k is removed, then the new mean is x bar times n minus k divided by n minus 1. Since the value is removed, you now divide by n minus 1. Alright, now we look into bivariate data, scatter plots and correlations. We are near the end of the chapter, so let us finish these up. Bivariate data is, as it sounds, a data involving 2 variables, bivariate. Scatter plot will show you the relationship between 2 columns of a bivariate data. So bivariate data can be x, y, y, z, however you take. It will show you the relationship between the 2 columns. But if you believe that one variable causes the change in the other variable, the variable that you believe to be the cause, see, the variable that is believed to be causing variation in the other, that will go on the horizontal axis or the x-axis. And the other variable, the one that is affected, will go on the y-axis. So it's a bit like independent variables and dependent variables. Now, when you do this type of analysis, you may not get a relation. Then you could reverse the variables. You could think of the explanatory variable being the affected variable, put it on the y-axis, and then put the affected variable in the x-axis and check if that influences. Alright, so it all depends on the experiment that you are conducting, and scatter plots are one of the easiest ways in checking relation between 2 variables. And the relation that we check is known as correlation. So correlation is a way of describing relationship between 2 variables. Remember, correlation is not causation. This is a very common fallacy and many people fall for it. So please read up on it. There are multiple instances where this is absolutely not true. Of course, when we talk about fallacies, there will be instances where it does turn out to be true, but that doesn't mean that in general it will be true. Okay, I can give you an example. Let's say we look into the rate of crime and the number of times sun rises in the east. So of course, every day the crime happens, the sun rises in the east. Does that mean sun rising in the east causes crime? Absolutely no, right? So correlation and causation are very different things. As a statistician, your job would be to just describe the variable, what it happens, what it is correlated to. Let it be upon the experts in the domain to figure out the causation. That's not your job, and that's not what correlation is to be used for. Now, correlation is a very important topic in statistics, so there are a lot of calculations that you will learn, mostly in first year uni where you take statistics 101, but for now this much is more than enough. Correlation can be of 4 types. It could be a strong positive correlation where the data points will be sloping upward and clustered. It could be a weak positive. It could be weak positive where the data points are still sloping upward but not grouped as tightly as in the strong positive case. Then you can have a strong negative correlation where the data points slope downwards and they are clustered together. And similarly, the weak negative correlation where the data points still slope downwards but they are not as tightly packed as the strong negative ones. Now remember, you can draw a line of best fit. A line of best fit is a line that represents the general trend in the data. We have seen this in time series data as well. The number of scatter points above and below the line of best fit should be approximately equal. There are various ways of drawing lines of best fit, and again, you will learn this in university. But for now, just know what line of best fit does. We have two more points to discuss, which is interpolation and extrapolation. Again, these are separate chapters in mathematics when you go to college. But for now, we will just know the definitions, like what is interpolation and what is extrapolation. So interpolation is estimating points within the range of the given data. Let's say you are recording monthly sales data and 1 month your intern forgets to log it in. So when you present the data to the manager, you will have to make sure that the data is there. Now, since the month has passed, there is literally no way to go back and get it. So all you can do is either plug in the best guess or use a mathematical interpolation method. I think the interpolation method is much more accurate. So interpolation is estimating the points within the range of the given data set using the line of best fit. So you know what the general trend is. You can approximately guess what the values would be according to interpolation standards. Okay. Now interpolation has a variety of techniques, a variety of formulae. You will learn all of those. As I told you, it's a whole chapter. We had done it in our grad course and our undergrad course. Now extrapolation is estimating points outside the range of the given data by extending the line of best fit. This is extremely inaccurate. So interpolation is generally much more accurate than extrapolation, as there is no real evidence of what happens outside the given data set. You can make an educated guess, but literally that's what it is. It's a guess. Interpolation is still rooted in data. You can do a linear interpolation, a quadratic interpolation, a cubic interpolation. All of these methods are there, but extrapolation is just wild guesswork. We end off the session with an example. So this is a question from the official study materials. The table shows the physics and chemistry marks both out of 90 of 15 people in a class. So chemistry, physics, draw a scatter graph. This type of questions will obviously not come in an MCQ test, but this is an exploratory question to get you used to figuring out correlations. I will show you the solution, but make sure you do try it on your own. Take a graph paper, maybe 5-10 minutes will be enough for you to finish up. And then when you look into the data set, you will find something like this. So this has a strong positive correlation. I cannot emphasize enough how important this is. Like, so many people believe fake statistics because they confuse these two, correlation and causation. If you need help with any ESAT or TMA chapter, please book a class with me using the links in the description. If you need more practice for ESAT or TMA, do check out my books from the Amazon links given in the description. With that being said, I'll end the video here. Thank you all for joining, and I'll see you in the next one where we discuss probability.